In the winter of 1887, a train climbed toward the summit of Washington's Cascade Mountains, knowing its route would soon disappear beneath towering snowdrifts. There was no long tunnel waiting beneath the peaks, no sheltered shortcut through the range, and no guarantee that tomorrow's journey would even be possible. Yet the Northern Pacific Railroad could not afford to stop. Thousands of passengers, freight shipments, and an entire transcontinental railway depended on a mountain crossing that had never been intended to last. How did workers keep trains moving before the Stampede Tunnel existed? Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from, and let's return to the race across the Cascades. By the late 19th century, the Northern Pacific Railroad had achieved what many believed would take far longer. Steel rails stretched across thousands of miles, steadily linking the Great Lakes with the Pacific Northwest. Town after town celebrated the arrival of the railway, and every newly completed section brought the dream of a true transcontinental connection closer to reality. One obstacle still remained. The Cascade Range stood directly across the railroad's path. Unlike the rolling plains farther east, these mountains offered steep valleys, dense forests, unstable slopes, and long winters capable of halting construction for weeks at a time. Choosing a route through them demanded far more than simply following the easiest valley. Survey parties spent months exploring possible crossings. They measured elevations, examined river valleys, and searched for a location where locomotives could climb without exceeding practical limits. Eventually, attention focused on Stampede Pass, where the surrounding landscape appeared to offer the most promising balance between distance and elevation. Finding a route, however, did not solve the larger problem. Engineers already knew that a long tunnel beneath the summit would provide the safest and most efficient railway. Trains could avoid the worst weather, maintenance costs would decline, and year-round operation would become far more dependable. Unfortunately, excavating such a tunnel through solid mountain rock would require years of difficult work. The railroad could not wait that long. Construction had progressed too far across the rest of the continent to leave the western connection unfinished. Investors expected trains to begin operating. Communities anticipated regular transportation. Freight already depended upon the expanding network. Delaying service until the tunnel was complete would postpone the very purpose of the railway itself. Company officials faced a difficult decision: either suspend operations until the permanent route existed, or create a temporary crossing over the summit while excavation continued below. They chose the second option. Instead of waiting for the mountain to be conquered underground, workers built a railway that climbed directly over the pass. The alignment demanded sharper curves and steeper grades than anyone considered ideal for a permanent main line. Yet it offered something even more valuable at that moment. It allowed trains to keep moving. Constructing the summit route presented its own challenges. Crews cleared dense timber, blasted rock outcrops, filled low ground with earth and stone, and laid track across terrain that offered very little level surface. Every completed mile pushed the railroad closer to the Pacific, while tunnel crews prepared for a much longer effort beneath the mountain. Everyone involved understood the arrangement was temporary. No one expected the summit crossing to serve forever. It existed because the railroad needed a working connection immediately, even if that connection demanded constant attention. The permanent answer would come later. For the moment, simply reaching the other side of the Cascades counted as success. The first trains soon began climbing toward the summit, proving the route could function. Keeping that railway open through changing seasons, powerful storms, and relentless mountain weather would become a challenge unlike anything the railroad had faced elsewhere. Building the summit line connected the railroad from coast to coast. Operating it day after day across one of America's harshest mountain ranges demanded a completely different kind of determination. Opening the summit route did not mean the railroad's problems had disappeared. It simply marked the beginning of a new routine. Every train approaching the Cascades entered a section of railway that demanded constant planning, disciplined crews, and perfect coordination. The line functioned, but only because hundreds of workers kept it operating every day. If you're enjoying this journey through forgotten railroad history, consider subscribing. Many of the world's greatest transportation achievements were made possible by temporary solutions that history rarely remembers. Heavy freight trains rarely crossed the summit with a single locomotive. The climb was simply too demanding for one engine to handle alone. Additional locomotives were attached to the rear or placed at the front to provide the extra power needed for the ascent. Once the steeper section had been conquered, those helper engines returned to assist the next train waiting below. Timing became just as important as horsepower. Large sections of the mountain route operated as single track, meaning trains traveling in opposite directions could not simply pass wherever they wish. Dispatchers carefully arranged movement so locomotives met only at designated sidings. One delayed departure could affect traffic across the entire crossing, forcing crews to adjust schedules throughout the day. Communication required patience as well as discipline. Telegraph stations positioned along the railway carried instructions between dispatchers and station agents. Every message confirmed which train occupied a particular stretch of track and when the next movement could begin safely. Before modern electronic signaling, those written orders formed the backbone of mountain operations. The railway itself demanded continuous attention. Track inspectors walked assigned sections searching for loose spikes, damaged rails, shifting ballast and drainage problems before they developed into serious hazards. Small repairs happened almost daily because mountain terrain never stopped changing. Rain loosened embankments, frost lifted sections of track, and falling rocks occasionally blocked the line without warning. Winter introduced another level of difficulty. Snow rarely arrived as a single storm. Fresh accumulations covered the railway repeatedly, reducing visibility and slowing every movement. Crews cleared switches, reopened blocked cuts, and removed packed snow from critical locations before trains could continue climbing toward the summit. Their work often began long before the first locomotive appeared each morning. Wooden snow sheds protected especially vulnerable sections where avalanches or drifting snow regularly buried the track. These long timber structures acted like protective tunnels above ground, allowing trains to continue through places that might otherwise remain blocked for days after major storms. Operating across the summit became a carefully balanced system. Dispatchers organized traffic, maintenance crews watched the railway, engine crews managed difficult grades, and countless workers prepared the route before each train arrived. Success depended upon every group performing its task at precisely the right time. Passengers often admired the mountain scenery from their windows without realizing how much preparation had made the journey possible. Behind every successful crossing stood an entire workforce whose efforts remained largely invisible to those simply traveling from one destination to another. Daily operations kept trains moving across the Cascades, but the mountain always held the advantage. Each winter would test the railroad in ways no timetable could ever predict. No timetable could negotiate with the Cascade Mountains. Once winter settled across the summit, the railroad answered to the weather instead of the clock. A train scheduled to arrive by afternoon might not appear until nightfall. Another could remain stranded for hours while crews struggled to reopen the line ahead. Unlike mechanical problems that could often be repaired with tools, the forces of nature arrived without warning and ignored every operating plan. Snow became the railroad's first opponent. Storm after storm buried the track beneath fresh layers that quickly exceeded the height of the rails. Before a locomotive could pass, workers had to clear every blocked section by hand or with specialized snowplows pushed by powerful steam engines. Even after the route reopened, drifting snow frequently filled the same cuttings again within a matter of hours. Avalanches posed an even greater threat. Steep mountainsides overlooking the railway occasionally released thousands of tons of snow, ice, broken trees, and rock in a single descent. Those sudden slides could bury track, destroy timber structures, or leave entire sections of the route inaccessible until rescue and repair crews reached the site. Nobody could predict the exact moment a slope would fail, making constant observation essential throughout the winter season. Track patrols became the railroad's eyes. Workers traveled assigned stretches of line searching for fresh cracks in retaining walls, leaning trees, unstable rock faces, blocked drainage channels, and signs that heavy snowfall was placing unusual pressure on the landscape. Their reports allowed supervisors to respond before relatively small problems developed into major interruptions. Keeping the railway open demanded far more than clearing snow alone. Timber bridges required regular inspection after severe storms. Culverts carrying mountain streams had to remain free of ice and debris so meltwater could flow beneath the track instead of washing away the embankment. Sections damaged by frost or erosion were rebuilt immediately because postponing repairs often created much larger failures later in the season. Snow sheds provided valuable protection, but they also required continuous maintenance. Heavy snowfall placed tremendous weight on their roofs, while moisture, freezing temperatures, and constant exposure gradually weakened wooden components. Carpenters replaced damaged beams, reinforced critical joints, and repaired roofs whenever conditions allowed. Life for maintenance crews demanded remarkable endurance. Many workers lived for extended periods in isolated camps scattered throughout the mountains. Supplies arrived by rail whenever conditions permitted, and communication with the outside world often depended upon telegraph lines that storms occasionally damaged. During particularly severe weather, entire crews remained on standby, prepared to respond the moment the railroad needed them. Passengers rarely witnessed that hidden effort. Most experienced only the final result, a train that eventually continued its journey after an unexpected delay. Behind those ordinary departures stood countless hours of labor performed in freezing temperatures, deep snow, and difficult terrain simply to keep one section of railway operating. As winter followed winter, one conclusion became impossible to ignore. The summit route had proven that trains could cross the Cascades, but maintaining that success demanded enormous resources every single year. A better answer was already taking shape beneath the mountain itself. While crews battled snow above the summit, another workforce pressed steadily through solid rock below. Their progress promised a future where the railroad would no longer depend upon the mountain's permission to keep moving. The temporary summit line was never meant to become the Northern Pacific's lasting mountain crossing. Its purpose was simpler and just as important. It kept a transcontinental railroad alive until a better route was ready. If you enjoy forgotten engineering stories, subscribe and join us for another journey into history's greatest construction achievements.